threat from uptown, you know my sound is major. I know you like the lyrics, kid, so just do me a favor. Tell the tech to turn my dad up. This is a pack cut, hey, yo, don't back up. Because I wanna dive in and swim in the mentals, where your thoughts roam. I wanna make your dome my home, therefore you'll never be alone. But when you hear my song, sing along with the rhythm. Cause I got faith in fat beats that I give them. Yes, it's the ears and I'm checking out the blunt one. Maybe I can have one, maybe I can con one. Chill, I'm one with God, brothers. It's hard to stay straight until you're scared straight, and then you can't wait to get out.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. We are recording this on February the 23rd of 2015. And wow, it is gorgeous here today, Ramon. This is the first day in my memory, my recent memory anyways, at least for the last year, that we've had actually crystal clear skies without any of those little funny streaks up there.
Wow.
I find that quite anomalous. I mean, yesterday it was clear for half of the day, but the sky was just littered with chemtrails, you know, with those contrails, the plane contrails. So the morning was crystal clear, then we had all those trails, then the afternoon was all cloudy. I don't understand how that works, but anyways, it's gorgeous out there today, and I would love to have some meteorologist or somebody explain to me how we can have 2 days right back to back with each other, both started off almost identically, and have them turn out so different. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. So how you doing, Ramon?
Pretty good. Just a couple of stories here. Do you want to read that first one?
Yeah, I'll go into that. You know, this is a good one for all of our UFO chasers out there. This happened last week on February 18th. There were reports began appearing on social media of lights over Lake Winnipeg. These were followed by Facebook posts by a Brent Manchese, whoever that is. UFO crash reported on the Jackhead Reserve in Manitoba, Canada. Apparently, the Canadian military have vehicles lined up on the North Shore. They are threatening anybody who tries to take pictures. Lots of eyewitnesses. There's a round object being hauled across the lake, being pulled by snowmobiles and a bombardier, whatever a bombardier is. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe some kind of a military vehicle. Yeah. Something was seen going down by 8 fishermen, and they reported it. Why they would not let the media know if it was a plane crash, we don't really know. Another report had some bad news about one witness with a camera. Apparently, a disc-shaped craft was seen crashing through the ice on the lake, and at least one person got photographic evidence, but has since been detained by Canadian military. The Canadian military, according to Lieutenant Colonel Paul Davies, commanding officer of the 38th Territorial Battalion Group, about 150 military personnel were at the frozen lake taking part in Exercise Arctic Bison 2015, a training program for dealing with emergencies in harsh environments. Emergencies like a UFO crash? No, not so, says Davies. There's no aliens, just my friends in the Air Force who are out there helping us on this exercise. That was not a UFO. So what was it? Davies said it was an airplane with quick takeoff capabilities. He said from a distance it may have looked like it was going straight up in the air, but it wasn't. An airplane taking off from a frozen lake? What about the crash? What about the disc? What about the photographic evidence? And what about the witnesses? What has really happened at Lake Winnipeg this week? Now, you know, everybody's talking, there were 8 witnesses who saw this thing come out of the sky, going down. And then the military says, no, this was a plane taking off going up, and it may look like it was going straight up. There's something that's not adding up there. You know, whether, yeah. And then there's definitely some videos out there. There's actually a video or some shots of all the military vehicles that are lined up on the edge of this lake. There's nothing that's really very clear, no clear shots of this, whatever object is in the lake. So anyways, for you chasers, there's a real hot recent one to do some investigation on. I'm really curious to see how this one pans out.
Yeah. Here's something to another news to actually that kind of goes with it. It's not about a crash, but anti-gravity propulsion comes out of the closet. Boeing, the world's largest aircraft manufacturer, has admitted it is working on an experimental anti-gravity project that could overturn a century of conventional aerospace propulsion technology. If the science underpinning them can be engineered into hardware. The story basically just goes into how they're working on it, and they make it sound like it's been a recent thing. I'm sure that's the public version.
Right.
So.
Yeah, well, maybe they're deciding that they're going to start letting some of this technology leak into the public.
Yeah, the reason why I found this one was because somebody had put up that Russia actually tested an anti-gravity device publicly, but the website that I found was all in Russian, and my Russian is very rusty, meaning non-existent.
I was going to say, is it anywhere close to your English?
Well, it's better than your English. So, and remember, I'm an English teacher. Yeah, so that's how I got this story. So I don't know really, because I couldn't find anything else like in the English version on Russia testing. There was a video, but it just shows like a bunch of Russians with a huge disc. It was very grainy and didn't look good at all, so I couldn't really tell whether it was real or not.
Russia's one country that if they decided to open the doors on all this technology that is out there, I think that they have and know a lot more than most people would believe. I think they're not too far off technology-wise from where the U.S. is. I mean, as far as the stuff that's been back engineered and put out there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of rumors about Russia and them trying to push the leak outs and stuff like that. It's hard to find any credible thing whether it's true or not, whether they are trying to push that.
Yeah.
And, supposedly they have a Tesla tower where they're getting free energy and testing these machines and stuff like that. And according to a lot of ufologists that we've had on the show, they're a lot more open about it, especially in the universities. It's not like here, here too. And the U.S., you go to a university and try to talk about it, you probably get arrested. But anyway.
All right. Well, shall we get into the show? We are really excited about this show. At least I am. I'm really excited about this show tonight. I picked up this book last weekend, and I sat down and opened it up, and 4 hours later, I looked at the clock and was kind of surprised that I'd been sitting there reading the same book for 4 hours, and I had just got completely sucked into this thing, and it was, and still is, absolutely amazing. We have Bradley Bartholomew with us. He wrote a book called The Spiritual Genome, and the Spiritual Genome brings to the forefront the theory of a networked intelligence in the DNA. He clearly outlines this theory that the DNA of all living creatures, including plants, is connected in the quantum substratum. And that it is this networked intelligence which constitutes the essential oneness from which springs all the diversity of life that we see around us. Brad's book illustrates how this networked intelligence is generated at the fundamental level by computer processing declared as the ultimate source of life. This, he says, is demonstrated by memristor in the DNA, which enable the story of data and which have a direct bearing on such widely believed phenomena as past lives and reincarnation. The author cohesively explains how the DNA can act as a universal quantum computer with sufficient processing power to potentially enable the generation of the entire universe. The Spiritual Genome explores how DNA acting as a universal quantum computer is foreshadowed in the Hindu Upanishads, written more than 2,500 years ago. The Upanishads are interpreted using state-of-the-art neuroscience as well as quantum mechanics. This is said to not only enable the precise location of the inner self, but also demonstrates that what we experience through our five senses is capable of being generated from within. Quantum mechanics also enables a deeper interpretation of Maya, the ancient Hindu doctrine of the illusory nature of all things. In the words of Bradley Bartholomew, the author, we find that all this diversity that we see around us is in fact a virtual reality nested in the networked intelligence. His website is www.spiritualgenome.com, and I'd like to welcome you to the 100th Monkey Radio, Brad Bartholomew.
Hello. Thank you, Tom. Thanks. Great to be here.
Oh, wow. Like I said, I sat down last weekend and started reading this, and I am, this kind of work is right up my alley. I really like to understand how things work, and because I truly believe that through understanding we forearm ourselves to much better navigate through this thing we call reality. So, surely. Oh, absolutely. So, Brad, tell me, how did you get started in all of this? I mean, has this been a passion your whole life, or what actually put your foot on the path to trying to understand life?
Oh, yes. Well, I was about 35 when I really started to become interested in these things. Prior to that, I went through a conventional career as a lawyer, but when I was about 35, I had certain experiences in life that I was actually practicing as a lawyer in Papua New Guinea, actually, and I had certain experiences up there that led me into writing. I started to get these urges to write, and from there, by about 35, I was back in Australia, and I was trying to write a novel. By that time, actually, I tried to write several novels, and I was sort of writing journals and all sorts of things. I was just, all of a sudden, I had become incredibly obsessed with, or driven by this notion of trying to become a writer. And I was actually writing a novel that required knowledge of psychology, psychoanalysis, and so I thought, what? I know nothing about psychology. How do I find out about this? And I went to the library and found the complete works of Sigmund Freud. And I'd been, up to that point, I'd been through all my schooling and university and whatnot, and I'd heard of Freud, obviously, but had read nothing of his work, and hadn't gone into it in any detail whatsoever. Anyway, it was coming across the complete works of Sigmund Freud that really was the turning point in my life, really, because I just sat down, and there's 23 volumes of his complete works, and I just read the entire thing, all 23 volumes, and by the end of it, I was hooked. And in fact, I actually at a later date, I actually reread the entire 23 volumes.
Oh, wow.
So I've actually read the complete works of Sigmund Freud from volume 1 to volume 24 or whatever, twice. that's the extent of the interest that psychoanalysis engendered in me to start with, and then from there, of course, then I'm interested in so much in aspects of Freud's work, the unconscious mind and whatnot, and virtually at the same time, I had a girlfriend that was going to a chanting at a Hindu sect here in Sydney, and she took me along for that. And so the Hinduism, as soon as I then encountered Hinduism in earnest for the first time, coupled with my enthusiasm for psychoanalysis, at that point I virtually said, right, okay, these two are related. Freud's unconscious mind has to be what the Hindus have been talking about with their inner self. And at that point I'm saying that I had some sort of an epiphany. And from then on, I like this. I refer to my career from then on as I've been tracking the inner self for the last 30 years.
So did you have a religious upbringing?
You would say religious in as much as I went to an Anglican high boarding school, high Anglican, you would say. So I mean, yes, I was heavily exposed to a religion through my school years. In these church boarding schools, it's a daily occurrence. There is a prayer, sort of a prayer session every morning. It's obligatory church, of course, on Sundays. And yes, I was heavily exposed to religion, but not Hinduism, of course. But I was heavily exposed to religion from an early age.
So going into the looking at Hinduism and these other doctrines didn't put the fear of God and the devil and hell into you, or had you gotten past that at that point?
Oh, well, I would say that I clearly remember when I was about 18 or 19, I'd left school, and there was a period there where I was seriously a serious Christian, and there was a period there where I was actually contemplating becoming a priest, I think. But by the time I'd reached 30, I was well and truly an atheist. I did not believe one iota of a Christian dogma, and I was calling myself an atheist or even an agnostic. I was quite convinced that there was no such thing as a supreme being, a God, call it what you will.
Yeah, much the same as me along those lines. Around that period in my life, the late 20s, early 30s, there was, well, actually, more up into the late 20s, I was very agnostic.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, from there, okay, you've got yourself exposed to Hinduism, and you've read Freud, and you're obsessive. Would you call it you're writing obsessive?
I would call it obsessive. I would call it definitely obsessive. I think this desire or this drive to write, it becomes an obsession. I mean, if you're a writer, it's not the sort of thing that you could sort of just decide one day, okay, yes, I might try and write a book. The writing urge seems to come on you, and there's really no stopping it. For instance, the way it started for me, writing, was simply I was involved in some crazy relationship in Papua New Guinea with a woman, and just to make sense of it, I started to write a journal about my relationship with her, and from then on, this urge to write just seemed to take over my life, really.
You know, the reason I ask that is because so many of the people that we've talked to relay much the same types of experiences. There's a very common thread there of the writing just kind of flowing through them, and it just it being an easy thing to do. Not necessarily easy all the way through. You know, there's some there's challenges within it, but it's something that flows, and it's like tapping into another source, that muse.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I enjoy writing even. You know, I don't sort of. I've never sort of whiled away hours just trying to write something. I've always had to actually be very disciplined, and the way I write is I will force myself every day to take an hour or something to write, or that I must write 2 pages today, that sort of thing. It's not a pleasurable experience for me either. It's just something that I feel that I have to do. I don't see myself as what these people that sort of just want to muse about things, you know, and sort of while away the time that. And nor am I a Philip K. Dick sort of writer that, you know, gets high on drugs and virtually that's all he does in life is there, you know, writing.
Right.
It's been a very disciplined process for me to write that book, and in fact that book is the culmination of 30 years of effort, 30 years of thinking about it virtually. From about 1988, I first started writing articles on Hindu philosophy. So it's actually from 1988 onwards, I've been working on that book, not constantly, but when new inspiration comes, a new chapter sort of thing. The book has been 30 years in the making.
Well, you know, this is definitely. I feel that this is definitely an inspired work, and where that inspiration derives from, maybe we can actually winnow some of that out through the conversation tonight. And I think if people actually read the book, they may understand where it comes from also. What was that point? Where was that point where you really started putting things together between, the work of Freud and all his work on the subconscious and the inner self and the Hinduism, and tying all that together? What did that look like for you?
This is in the late 1980s, and I virtually got this. I got this drive or this desire to actually go out. Well, actually, what happened was I was doing my own study now in neuroscience, trying to pinpoint now in neuroscience where the inner self is. You know, Freud just talks about an unconscious mind. The Hindu Upanishads just talk about the inner self in the heart, whatever. I was doing my own research into neuroscience to try and actually pinpoint the part of the region of the brain where the inner self is most likely to be located. And I actually, I wrote a preliminary article about this, and at that point I sort of I got this urge then that I must go to India. That I have to go out there and actually sell the message. I have to go out there and tell the world about the inner self. And so I went to India, and I stayed about 3 months or so. I was in an ashram in India, in Ganushpuri it is. It's about 2 hours out of Mumbai. And when I got to Mumbai, I went to major bookstore selling religious books, and I just literally I purchased, I don't know, about 30 or 40 books, a number of books that I could fit into a medium-sized suitcase, and then I went off to this ashram with all these books, and I just sat there for 3 months reading all these books. By that stage, I had clear ideas in my mind of where the inner self was located in the brain, and by that stage I had the Hindu philosophy side of it as well as elementary neuroscience side of it, to then put together a series of articles on Hindu philosophy, which then I came back to Australia and I wrote 3 articles on Hindu philosophy that outlined where the location of the inner self in the brain, which I was saying is the embryo brain region. This is the part of the brain where that appears, of course, just after conception, the first part of the brain. Then I wrote another article incorporating Hindu philosophy then on the operation of the senses, because the embryo brain region just happens to be also the region where neuroscience clearly says the stimulus comes for our sensory input, and also then a third article on the meaning of Maya, the illusory aspect. So I had qualifications as a lawyer. I've been through university, but I was not by no means was I a Hindu academic. But I sent off these articles, and they were all published in various journals, dozens, half a dozen or more journals in India. But my first article, my primary article, the Inner Self Located, was actually taken up by the Indian Philosophical Quarterly from the University of Pune, which is the premier philosophical journal in India. And I mean, to get an article published in that journal is, it's virtually, from a Western point of view, it's like getting an article published in the Cambridge Journal on Philosophy, that sort of thing.
Right.
It's a really
prestigious.
Prestigious.
Yes. Yes.
And for them to have accepted that article and published it, and they even had to reformat it for me, it was really a changing point then in my whole approach to what I was trying to do. I felt that it gave me credibility. Then I am a Hindu philosopher. From that point on, I am a Hindu philosopher. I've had works published in the most prestigious philosophy journals in India, and so from then on, I knew I was on the right track, you might say.
Yeah, that definitely would be a one of those points that give you the self-assurance and the self-assurance that you are on to something. Yeah. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the inner self found. You say it's in the embryonic part of the brain, and can you describe a little bit more for us and for our audience what the embryonic part is actually?
Okay, so it consists of the midbrain, hypothalamus, thalamus, and brainstem. This is the essential core part of the brain that appears, only a matter of weeks after conception. And the thing is with this, when you think about it, all creatures have some sort of an embryo brain. There are all sorts of theories. in Hinduism is a very diverse topic, and there's a lot of theory in Hinduism that the inner self is actually located in the cortex of the brain. But in my way of thinking, I was quite clear on this. Not all creatures have the human cortex. So if all creatures have an inner self, and including plants, the inner self must be located in the embryonic part of the core embryonic part of it. And also, interestingly, I've come across, in relation to plants, that Darwin was actually of the opinion that in relation to plants, the primary root of the plant actually acts as a primeval brain, and in fact now in mainstream science there's a group of scientists that call themselves the Society for Neurobiology in Plants that are actually trying to get across the idea that plants actually have a form of intelligence, and so that ties in then with my notion that well, even in plants, it's possible to pinpoint a part of the structure of this thing, of this organism, that actually has an inner self.
Right. Are you familiar with Clive Baxter's work?
No, I'm not.
The Secret Life of Plants. It is Clive Baxter, right, Ramon?
Oh,
yeah, Clive Baxter.
Okay. No, well, I have heard that. I've heard of that title.
Well, there's one that. Oh, you definitely have to look into that one. There's a stimulus response experiments that he did that are absolutely remarkable.
Wow, good. I will look into it. I always follow up these leads.
Yeah, his professional job was he was a polygraph, for criminal courts, and he started doing that to plants, and he would do things like light a match close to one plant in another room, and the other plants would react, or he even went as far as like boiling live shrimp, but it was set on a timer that he had no idea, and he left the room. And when he came back, he saw that when that happened, the plants in the room started reacting to the shrimps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing I found recently actually was this, where certain type of fungi that lives within the roots and kind of wrap themselves around the root have actually helped to, like, a type of communication between the roots of this one tree to the other trees around. And what they found is that they have this main tree that's like the mother tree, and she's like the oldest, and would send nutrients to the other plants that might not be getting certain types of nutrient because of where they're located. And in a lot of jungles, you get this vast networks of roots that connect from one tree to another.
Sure. Yes. There's a lot of material now. In a chapter in my book on biophotons, I go into this in quite a lot of detail. There's a lot of material going back to the 1920s, where if you put plants in two different rooms, and depending on what sort of communicating material is forms a window between the two rooms, in some cases, if the plants die in one room, they will also die in another room, and there's all sorts of theories that the plants actually communicate via ultraviolet light, and there's there's an amazing amount of evidence now also that plants are extremely sensitive to their environment, and that they communicate, and a lot of the things that we customarily consider to be intelligence in other animals, plants can do as well. And so from this, clearly, it's a case of trying to ascertain where might be the source of this intelligence in a plant. And in fact, what you're saying, that the roots of these plants are just alive with electromagnetic activity. Virtually, the roots have they're synonymous with brain waves. You can measure the electromagnetic activity in the roots of a plant, and it's similar to an encephalogram that you can use for measuring brain waves in an animal.
Oh, that's interesting stuff. Well, so let's dive into the first chapter in your book, Networked Intelligence and Morphogenic Resonance. That's what just absolutely sunk its hooks into me and drugged me for the next 4 hours into this book. Would you explain a little bit about what you're talking about with networked intelligence and the morphogenic resonance?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Now, so this is really where the book took off for me. In 1988, I started writing these articles. They were published in India in the early 90s, and then so then there was quite a hiatus for me for many years during the 90s, where nothing more was coming to me in terms of inspiration. At that stage, I just had this conviction in my own mind. After having written these articles, I had this conviction that we are all somehow joined. That you often hear this business of we're all one, and that's become kind of a cliche. But I had this absolute conviction that all living creatures are somehow joined. And from where I was with my theory, I felt that it must be that we're all somehow joined at the base of the brain. In the base of the brain, the embryo brain region in all of us, at a level that we're not aware of, these are all somehow communicating. And this gets into sort of telepathy, mental telepathy, and all sorts of phenomena which are out there that we all know about and just take for granted. That whole business of you can be thinking about someone and all of a sudden the phone rings that you haven't heard of them for 5 years and they're on the phone. There's all sorts of phenomena out there that we're somehow connected. And I had this theory. It was clear to me that we must all be joined, literally joined, at the embryo brain region. And then in about 2004, a friend of mine told me about this theory, networked intelligence. It's by some German authors, Fosar and Bludorf, that wrote this book, Vernetzte Intelligenz in German, and some snippets of this book were circulating on the internet. And my friend said, have you seen these theories about the networked intelligence? They seem to fit in with what you're talking about. And so, of course, then I looked up the internet, got onto them, and as soon as I saw what they were talking about, the DNA of all creatures, including plants, is connected at a subatomic level. I just, boom, this is it. This must be it. This is how we're joined. And so then I had to get I had to order from Germany. It wasn't translated into English. I ordered the book from Germany and then sat down. Fortunately, I had done German at school. It was very rusty. But so I sat down and I read this book in German with the aid of a German-English dictionary, and literally translated the entire book to get their message. And so then that was where, at that point, then I was able to put together the chapter on the networked intelligence, and essentially what you were saying earlier, interestingly, about the Russian scientists. This networked intelligence actually was started by some Russian scientists in the early 90s who had managed to detect a hypercommunication in the DNA. That's how they described it. And they came up with this novel, this interesting theory of, or experimental results, they're calling it, of the DNA phantom effect. They were doing experiments shining laser light through DNA, and they would shine laser light through a DNA sample, and a certain wave pattern would appear at the back on a screen at the back. But then, so then, if they take the physical sample away, and as they're still shining the laser light through the area where the DNA sample was, there is still a wave pattern appearing on the back of the screen, and they termed this the DNA phantom effect. It was indicating that their theory was that there was some sort of force field in that DNA that was above anything that our physical senses can detect. But there's some force field in that DNA that is capable of communication with DNA in other creatures.
Are you familiar with that experiment, Ramon? Was that Russians that did the experiment with the frog and the salamander?
Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Was it these guys that grew? I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, they shined the laser through the frog embryo into the the other way around. Salamander into the frog, and they got a salamander.
That's right. That's correct. And the point of it is that they had managed to transfer the information in the DNA from one embryo to another without the normal process of cutting and splicing of chemical genes. They were able to encapsulate in the laser light the actual information contained in the salamander embryo and transfer it into a frog embryo. So this is precisely where they come up with this notion then of this ability via laser light of a hypercommunication.
That whole theory, well, it's not really a theory now, is it? This truth that you are able to move that information without via light, that opens up a whole new world for planet Earth on how we are able to deal with different things. I mean, I just see a picture in my mind of going in for, say you contract some freaky disease. You go into the local lasomat and you plop down in a chair and they shine the clean DNA through to you, and boom, it's fixed.
Yeah. Well, yes. As a matter of fact, it's not in my book, but only this year I came across an article in New Scientist magazine where there is now in mainstream scientists are talking about how our brain waves can control our genes. They've come up with experiments where they've actually, again via biophotons, they've come up with experiments where the frequency of the brain wave can then be transmitted via electromagnetic signals and actually change, actually control the operation of our genes. And I've actually written an article about this that's on my website. As I say, it was after my book was published, but I'm now working on the theory that this notion. The article on my website, by the way, is memory storage in the DNA, and I've come up with the notion that this must be how our memory can be stored in the DNA. The frequency of the brainwaves, if the frequency of the brainwaves is capable of reacting with our genes, genetic material, well, this could be the simple explanation of how memories are stored.
Wow.
And also, in what you were saying, for instance, in India, there are all sorts of. It's well known that there are gurus in India that can do all sorts of extraordinary things just by with their mental process, just with the power of their mind. Like they can be buried alive for hours and go without oxygen. And just through the control that their mind has over their metabolism, they can survive, and they can lie on a bed of nails. They can walk on a bed of hot coals, this sort of thing, without any physical injury, just by their ability to control their physical processes by their mind. And so this leads then into that they must have the ability to actually control their genes.
Right. Well, the whole memory thing of DNA. I mean, there's we could do a whole show just on DNA and its memory capacity and how it works. But the DNA.
Well, just on that, this concept of memory, in this article that I've written, Memory Storage in the DNA, I coupled this then with another recent finding that I found in New Scientist magazine, where there's a group of scientists in the States that they had actually. They came up with this experiment where they proved that the memories of one generation, the next generation can actually somehow the memories of an experience that our first generation has experienced can be then recalled by the second and even the third generation. What they did was they took some laboratory mice, and they caused these mice to have some sort of a trauma in relation to a sensitivity to a certain smell, and then so this is obviously just an experience that these mice have had. It's got nothing to do with their genes, and so then they bred a first generation and a second generation of these mice, and the first and second generation likewise then had this same traumatic sensitivity to this particular smell, and so their hypothesis was that somehow the memory of this trauma had become lodged, had become stored in their genes, because it's only through then their genetic material that it could be passed on to their progeny. And so that is how I've come up with I've linked that case history, that case experience, then with this notion that our brain waves control our genes, and thought, right, okay, these two are related. So essentially what it means that if these theories are correct, if you experience some sort of a trauma or an injury in your life, and your partner as well, so that all the genetic material is passed on to your offspring, the memory of that experience then can be passed on through the genes.
You know, that opens up all sorts of different possibilities and theories and potential explanations for things like reincarnation. I mean, you know, how we look at past lives and you know, at times people access information from purported past lives that is absolutely remarkable. There's some amazing stories out there on past lives and that sort of thing. But if you take a look at this, deeply look at this genetic memory like this, there's has to be that question there on whether or not that is what people are experiencing, and they're just accessing maybe at a deeper level that genetic memory instead of actually accessing a past life.
Yes, this is precisely where my theories lead. I actually do a chapter in the book about past lives, and my take on this is that yes, the memories of all living creatures are actually stored, must be stored in our DNA, and then you know, generations later, that's right. So if the memory actually records, if the DNA actually stores the lives of all living creatures, then obviously in later generations, these experiences can surface in our dreams, or even in sort of waking images of that they can just pop into our mind, and I maintain that this then gives an explanation of past lives. It's not that these people that experience past lives, it's not that they themselves have actually lived a life, you know, that they have, there's an absolute complete continuity between a life in the past and them. But what it does mean is that experiences of people that have lived in the past can surface primarily in their dreams, or even in their waking thoughts, which gives them the impression that wow, I must have somehow lived in the past. I've got some memory here of that, you know, that I can't explain any other way. But if the memory, all memories from all creatures are actually stored in the DNA anyway, well, this is the obvious explanation of the whole past lives phenomenon.
Right. So here's a hypothesis for you, or one that I'd like you to give me your opinion on. Let's say, what if we took some DNA from a long extinct or frozen sample of a human that, say, you know, 10,000 years old, and revived it back to life? Do you think it would exhibit the development from the area it lived and died in, or would it tap into some collective pattern for development of the now time?
Yeah, I don't. Well, let me think about that.
I mean, because the kind of way I'm saying this is, you know, we've got this connection, this underlying connection, and you know, we can go into the telepathy and all of those different areas, you know, to really picture this. But and I know, we actually talked early in the show here about that fundamental connection at a subatomic level that all these things have. I'm just curious if the development, the physical development, would be something along the lines, and the genetic memory would be something that would come from that past era, or if it would be updated to its current resonance that's within the planet at the time.
Okay, well, as a matter of fact, I read an article, only last week I read an article that the DNA, scientists are now saying that the DNA is the best storage DNA, the best data in storage material known to man. They've found horse DNA that was 2,000. They estimate 2,000 years old, and they maintain that this horse DNA still has all its data intact. So they're actually now doing experiments to try and organize in terms of making a time capsule of current human civilization, which would be capable of being read by creatures that are living on our planet like 10,000 years from now or more. They're actually using DNA encased in glass to actually encode details of our current civilization. They're using a very elementary form of a code. The genetic basis, the ATs and the GCs. The AT is, if you take the AT as a 1 and the GC as a basis as a 0, then they're fabricating DNA in the laboratory, for instance, to put the binary code of a book or something like that, fabricating new DNA which actually contains the binary code of that for that book, and then putting it in glass, and they're saying that data will remain intact for at least 2,000 years.
Wow.
But they don't know of any other physical material that is capable of holding data for that long.
Wow.
So to answer your question, essentially, if it became possible now to clone that DNA from that horse that's 2,000 years old, and actually, bring to life a living creature based on cloning that DNA, that clone would essentially walk out of the past and be walking amongst us with a 2,000-year-old DNA data.
Wow. Interesting.
Because all other materials that they try to store data on, it's all temperature related. It only has a life of 20 or 30 years or something like that. It's only DNA that is capable of maintaining the integrity of the data for thousands of years.
Wow, interesting stuff. Oh wow, I just looked at the clock. Oh man, here we go again. So, wow, we've burned up this first hour, and I've just barely started. Oh God, how you doing over there, Ramon? You're not asleep, are you?
No, I'm awake. I'm here.
Oh geez. Oh well. Bradley, one last question before we take off for our break here and leave something for our audience out there to jump into the second hour. Big, broad question about the book and about the work and about what you've been passionate about for at least these last 30 years. What do you hope to accomplish with putting this out there?
Okay, hope to accomplish. Well, I maintain that it's essentially there is a lot of physics now that coming up with all these theories about the origin of the universe, the Big Bang, etc., and expansion of the universe. There's all this theory out there being put out there by mainstream physicists, which is actually wildly impractical, wildly unreal. And so ultimately, my take on all this, the physics, the quantum mechanics, the explanations for the universe, my take on it all is that it's all indicating that the universe is virtual. But the mainstream scientists, they're coming up with these wild theories about the nature of the universe, but still thinking that it must be somehow real and physical. But if you actually look at what they're saying and actually think about it, the only explanation for all the weirdness of quantum mechanics is that the universe really must be virtual. This gets just that item that you were talking about, Ramon, of this now. They're coming up with anti-gravity. Yeah. You see, that can't happen. If it's a real physical universe, that can't happen. But if it's a virtual universe anyway, yes, it can. Not only can it happen, but it will happen, because these things can't happen if it's real and physical. But if it's a virtual universe, well, yes, this theory of putting together some sort of a flying machine that has anti-gravity capacities, going through wormholes, all this sort of business, this can only be explained if the universe is virtual. And I mean, so that is my primary motivation. And as I told you back when I started writing, and this conviction that we're all somehow joined at the subatomic level, that can't happen if we're just all real physical creatures. There has to, for an explanation for all that, the only explanation can be that we're virtual.
Well said. Well said. I right in line with you there. All right, so, and your website is thespiritualgenome.com, and if you're out there listening to us on one of those other media outlets, the iTunes, the Vimos, the YouTubes, wherever this happens to land, I would urge you to pop on over to www.thehundredthmonkeyradio.com and check out the 4.5 years worth of material that we've got sitting there ready for you to listen to. Open your eyes and expand your mind. All right. We will see you in hour 2. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
Namaste, my friend.
Shout, damn, I got freedom. Unless it's being taught, black man, I know you need one. The right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. The plan, then that's the native. You shouldn't tell an artist not to be creative. You see, the motive is to control more than missed it. Listen up, listen to I start to enter. The beats I'm bending, the vibes I'm sending, it's pleasure, never better. Even though shit is a mess, I never stress, in touch with insight, therefore I'm blessed with the armor. Tell your mama, but kill the drama. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you listen, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you listen, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you listen, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. Yo, the master rhymer indiscreet. I walk the street with the knowledge, learning about things that you can't get in college, like science from the pavement, beats from the basement. My mouth full of lyrics, then the label makes the placement. Then my face went across the screen. This girl saw me getting raw to the beats with gasoline. My self-esteem went through the roof. Stepped into the club, yo, I got juice on the MI. Now she's in my face, dragging me all around the place. Damn, it's a disgrace that I can't enjoy my craft, spew my math, cause I'm too busy running away from this girl with the dumb laugh. My pad straight, so I lose the habit, and yo, I bounce like the rabbit. Yo, she's got the habit, cause she's chasing me. I'm out the door, kid, it's in the soul, and I'm free. The right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you listen to